This is a guide for Grom the Paunch's campaign in Mortal Empires under Legendary difficulty. Because of the variations that can happen between individual campaigns, the focus of this guide will be on my thought process for each decision that I make and the overall strategy, rather than it being a rigorous turn-by-turn guide. On the first turn, I built the growth building at Massive Orcal. I also embedded the Troll Hag into my army and attacked Paravon's army. Because of the balance of power, I manually resolved the battle to minimise casualties. My goal was to wipe out Paravon as fast as possible. Since their biggest threats were their artillery and missile units, initially I placed my army far away from the enemy with the exception of Grom. My plan was to use Grom to waste the ammo of their archers and their trebuchet. Grom is good at doing this as he is a fast, tanky unit with regeneration. After I depleted the enemy ammo, I moved my forces back onto the hill in preparation for the attack. I then used my Troll Hag to cast Spirit Leech, so that the enemy starts to charge towards me. The first unit to make contact with me were their mounted yeomen. To deal with this, I used the Goblin Archers and one of the Troll units to deal with them. I also made sure to keep using Spirit Leech on their general whenever I could. Since Grom is very tanky, I used him to tank multiple units at once. This took a lot of pressure off the other infantry in my army. Since I am terrible at using chariots effectively, I simply used them to distract a couple of the enemy units. Eventually, their general started to attack one of my goblin units. This was a great opportunity for the Troll Hag to deal some damage to him, as he was currently distracted. If you use the same techniques that I did, you should be able to easily win this battle and gain a decisive victory. Since both Grom and the Troll Hag have regeneration, you can use the end of the battle as an opportunity to heal, although you shouldn't have taken too much damage. Unfortunately, this enemy army gets fully wiped out if you defeat them, so sadly you cannot fight them again to gain more experience. I then put a point into Route Marcher for Grom and replenished troops for the Troll Hag. Afterwards, I issued the Camp Ruckus commandment at my capital and disbanded the recruitment building. I will now give you an overview of the strategy that I plan to follow in this campaign. As you can see, our starting province is in the middle of Bretonnia. However, all the surrounding Bretonian settlements are in an orange climate. This means that if we were to settle in these settlements and try to build them up, we would have to deal with increased construction cost, reduced public order, and reduced income. However, because we are playing Grom, the High Elf Island is actually a suitable climate for us. Therefore, my approach was this. My goal was to sack as many regions in Bretonnia as possible, so that I could A. level up Grom, and B. generate treasure so that I could level up my capital as fast as possible. Once my capital reached tier 5, and once my lords and heroes were at a suitably high level, my plan was to then invade Lovern, wiping out Tyrion and Eltharion in the process. I then attacked Quenelles using Grom with the intent of sacking and then occupying the settlement. I manually resolved the battle, making sure to waste the enemy ammo before aggroing them using Spirit Leech. I then put a point into Death from Below for Grom and then Spirit Leech for my Troll Hag. After sacking the settlement, I occupied it. I did not repair the settlement building or build anything in it, as I had zero intention of keeping the region. I started to research towards the Healing Mushrooms technology for the extra replenishment. Finally, I recruited 3 Goblin Archers before ending the turn. On the next turn, I constructed the money building at my capital. I then marched Grom to the border between Quenelles and Parathon before recruiting 3 more Goblin Archers. You can see on the screen that Parathon had no military strength on this turn. However, I expected that on the next turn, they would have recruited a few extra units. On the next turn, I sieged Parathon. While the balance of power may look alarming, this battle is actually fairly easy to win. I will show you how I approach this battle. In the deployment phase, I placed my army in a compact formation at the edge of the map. This is so that the number of towers that can hit our army is minimised. I then placed Grom in front of my army. This is because the towers will aim for the unit which has the lowest displacement from said tower, as long as it is inside the red frontal cone. I want Grom to tank the tower as he has regeneration. At the start of the battle, I moved Grom towards the wall. This is because I wanted to waste the ammo of the archers on the wall, so that our infantry could eventually reach the door without being attacked. Since Grom would sometimes exit the frontal cone of the leftmost tower, I decided to move my Troll Hag in front of the rest of the army, so that the tower targets the troll. I should have done this in the deployment phase however, so don't make that same mistake. After wasting the archer ammo, I began to move my archers closer to the wall so that they could harass the enemy. I also moved all of my melee units to the gate so that they could break it down. At this point, the tower will start to attack your archer units, but the total damage inflicted should only be mild. After the gate was destroyed, I sent in all of my melee units in a blob. Doing this is beneficial because the Troll Hag has an aura which reduces the enemy's melee attack, so getting the enemy to blow up allows you to maximise the effectiveness of this aura. Although in this battle I did not always keep my troll hag embedded in the blob, which was a minor mistake. Eventually the blob grew large enough for the goblin archers to be able to hit some of the units at the back of the blob. If we decided to climb the walls using the goblins instead, we would have ended up taking way more casualties. Towards the end of the battle, the enemies in the blob started to mass rout. To finish the battle, I moved my melee units in a blob towards the town square to inflict the army loss penalty. After winning the siege, I sacked and then occupied Paravon. Since I had more than 50 scrap at the start of this turn, we completed the quest which gives us the unique item which summons a rogue idol. We also unlocked a random ingredient. In my campaign, I unlocked the green spores, which was great because we needed the extra growth. Since we also had a quest to use the cauldron to cook any recipe, I used the green spores and the ocean clam to gain growth, reputation, replenishment, and by completing the quest, I gained extra gold and scrap. I put another point into Death from Below on Grom and life leeching on the troll hag. I also gave the troll hag the unique arcane item. Finally, I recruited 3 more goblin archers and issued the recruitment commandment at Paravon before ending the turn. On the next turn, I upgraded my capital to tier 2. I then attacked Montfort, declaring war on Carrick Ziflin in the process. Even though the sack value was 0, I still wanted to attack it so that I could level up Grom and my troll hag. I intended to keep doing this every turn as it was an easy source of experience and post-battle loot. To save you some time, I will tell you how I will level up Grom for his next few levels. This turn, I put a final point into Death from Below. Next, I would put a point into Ravager as 4 points are needed to progress through the blue line. Then, I would put a point into Iron Hard, and after that I would put a point into Lightning Strike. For his next 3 points, I would upgrade Mob Boss, and to complete the blue line, I would then grab Renowned and Feared. As for the Troll Hag, this turn I put a point into Replenish Troops. After, I will put 3 points into Soul Blight, and then I would put a point into Evasion. Next, I would put 3 points into the Purple Zone, as it is a very useful spell for sieges. Then, I would put a point into Magical Reserves, Arcane Conduit, and Earthing. Finally, I would prioritise spending the rest of my points to make the Troll Hag tankier and more mobile, making sure to grab Immortality if the Troll Hag has a desirable trait. Before ending the turn, I recruited another Goblin Archer unit, although I should have also replaced my Goblin melee units with Goblin Archers too, I just didn't for some reason. On the next turn, I got a quest to win 3 battles and the Food Merchant also appeared. Therefore, I sacked Montfort again before interacting with the Food Merchant. Since it is very early in the game, it is probably best if you purchase the ingredient that the merchant offers. However, consider another option if the ingredient that the merchant offers is very easy to unlock. In my campaign specifically, I offered to buy the ingredient. A couple of turns later, I upgraded the money and growth building at my capital to tier 2, purchased the public order building, and purchased the engineering building so that I could get access to rock lobbers faster once the settlement reaches tier 3. On this turn, Carrick Ziflin also sent their strongest force to Montfort. Since I was lazy, I just auto-resolved the battle. The only units that I lost were the Goblin melee units, which I should have replaced with archers anyway. Since that was my 3rd victory after getting the quest, I completed the quest. I also then auto-completed the following quest, which was to embed a troll hag into my army. I then also auto-completed the next quest too, which was to kill 1,000 enemies in battle. This meant that I could technically do the quest battle if I wanted to, but I decided against it for now. This was because I wanted to level up Grom more first to make sure that the battle was easier to complete. On turn 8, a rebellion at Paravon spawned. This was also a nice source for experience. I intentionally resolved the battle manually so that I could fight the rebels a second time to gain extra experience. On turn 9, I sacked Montfort again. I also attacked the remaining Carrick Ziflin army. The good thing about playing the greenskins is that the Eat Captives option actually heals the lords and heroes too, not just multi-model units. I also force matched towards Carrick Ziflin so that I could sack it next turn. Before ending the turn, I upgraded my capital to tier 3. On the next turn, I sacked Carrick Ziflin for a nice sum of cash and for experience. Baston also took Montfort from the dwarves, so I declared war on them too so that I could sack it for more experience. On turn 11, I received a lump sum of cash from completing the chapter objective. You can see that I already had a lot of cash, so we should be able to easily upgrade our capital. Baston also sent a sizable force to Montfort this turn. I decided to manually resolve the battle to minimise casualties. After sacking Montfort, I moved Grom towards Carrick Ziflin so that I could sack it next turn. You can see that vampire rebels have also spawned at Carrick Ziflin. On the next turn, I defeated the vampire rebels at Carrick Ziflin, and after that I sacked the settlement. I then marched just past the border between Carrick Ziflin and Montfort so that I did not take extra attrition. You can see that the rebels have also spawned back in Paravon. Grom is now level 13 and has 2 skill points. The first point I put into Renowned and Feared to complete the blue line. I then spend the second point on his great immensity. In the future, I plan to put a point into Culinary Curmudgeon, mainly for the faction-wide bonus growth. I would then put a point into Gargantuan Glutton, and then roll them over. I would then grab the Goblin Tide and down to size skills as they provide nice buffs to goblins. Next, I would go down the red line by getting Inspiring Presence, and then put 3 points into Dagobos, and then 3 points into Death from Above, as I planned on adding artillery to my army eventually. I would then grab these remaining skills on the red line that I have highlighted on the screen. Finally, I would put any remaining points into making Grom a tankier fighter. You can see on the screen the bonuses for having high reputation. In particular, the bonuses to growth and public order are very useful. While it may be tempting to call a war, you should not do so unless it is absolutely necessary, as when the war ends you will temporarily lose those bonuses until your reputation increases again. In my campaign, my plan was to not call a war until I invaded Lothern. On the transition to the next turn, Durfu declared war on me. However, I was not concerned about being attacked by any wood elves because they have the isolationist trait. On the next turn, I once again sacked Carrick Ziflin, and then I went and sacked Montfort. Since my plan was to kill the Paravan rebels next turn, I positioned Grom such that I could sack Montfort again next turn, and have enough movement range to be able to deal with Paravan. Since my capital was now at tier 3, I upgraded all the buildings there. I also constructed a landmark building, mainly for the extra growth, but the income was also nice. Finally, I purchased a troll building so that I could increase my capacity for troll hags. On the next turn, I sacked Montfort again before attacking the Paravan rebels. While I should have manually resolved the fight, so that I could fight them again to get extra experience, I was lazy and just auto-resolved. I also started to research towards the no-complaining technology for the bonus public order. I then force-matched Grom to the border between Montfort and Carrick Ziflin so that I could sack both settlements next turn. A couple of turns later, I decided to tunnel back to my capital. This was because I could recruit goblin rocklobbers, and I wanted to get them so that I could easily siege walled settlements. During the end turn, Baston retook Quenelles, but that was fine as I did not develop the region whatsoever. In the next turn, I disbanded both my troll units and a goblin archer unit so that I could recruit 3 rocklobbers. At the time, my plan was to sack and occupy the Carcassonne settlements and then the Bordelot settlements to gain large sums of cash. However, because of reasons which will be revealed later, I had to change that plan. A couple of turns later, I reached the Brion settlement. However, since there was a sizable force in there, I had to manually resolve it. I will show you how I approached the siege. In the deployment phase, I placed my army in a compact formation at the edge of the map. I placed Grom in front of my army so that he could tank the towers. I then used the artillery to destroy the towers to make it safe for the rest of my army. After destroying the appropriate number of towers, I then sent Grom to waste the ammo of the archers on the wall. This is because Bretonnian archers have a much larger range than goblin archers, so if I tried to harass enemies with the goblin archers, they would be attacked by their archers. Next, I set my troll hag close to the wall so that she could cast the purple sun. This ability is effective in sieges with a lot of enemy units, as the enemies will be densely packed together. I kept casting the purple sun until the enemies were thinned out. Afterwards, I started to match my goblin archers to the wall so that they could harass the enemy. I specifically did not aim for the archers with no ammo which were facing the outside, because if I did, then the AI could replace them with an archer unit which has ammo. Therefore, it is best if you harass the enemies which are facing inside the settlement. Since Grom is also a very good fighter, I sent him inside the settlement to deal with the infantry. However, once he ran out of regeneration, I stopped doing this. Using these techniques, I was able to win the siege with minimum casualties. I will not show any more sieges done in this campaign, as the overall strategy was exactly the same for each siege after this point. I then recruited another troll hag. While I normally don't have 2 troll hags in an army, I wanted to start to level up the second one, so that when I do recruit a second army, I can attach that level up troll to the new army. On the next turn, the food merchant reappeared. Luckily, it was right next to my newly recruited troll hag, so I moved the troll into the blue circle. Since the merchant offered the Harperhead's ingredient, I took it because that ingredient has a powerful effect, and it is a pain to unlock, as the unlock condition involves sacking a Dark Elf settlement. I then started to march towards Castle Carcassonne. However, the Fey Enchantress was in the way, so I had to defeat her army. I resolved the battle manually to minimise casualties. In the deployment phase, I placed the artillery at the back and my archers in the checkerboard formation, with the troll hag at the front of the checkerboard. I then made sure that Grom was placed closer to the enemy army so that he could waste their ammo. As the battle started, I moved the rest of my army into the corner of the map and moved Grom further ahead. After wasting the enemy ammo, I aggroed their army by using the fish breath attack. If I didn't have this attack available to me, I would have used the troll hag to aggro. The first unit to make contact with me were the Grail Guardians. I obliterated them using the goblin archers. You can also see the effectiveness of the checkerboard formation. Any units which are attacking the archers at the front of the checkerboard can easily be attacked by the archers in the rows behind the front. The rest of the fight basically played itself. The archers slaughtered any units which got close. Because the archers are in a square formation, it is easy to rotate them if you have to attack units which are coming from a direction that the goblins are not facing. Before ending the battle, I made sure to wound the Fey Enchantress. This was also a good opportunity for Grom and the Troll Hag to regenerate. Unfortunately, I did not have enough movement range to attack the army again, so I went into raiding stance. Defeating the Fey Enchantress also gave my army extra replenishment, which was a nice bonus. Unfortunately, on the next turn I had to abandon my plans to sack Carcassonne, as Carrick Ziflin were threatening my capital. In hindsight, I should have made peace with the dwarves while I had the opportunity to, before going after Carcassonne. I also embedded the second Troll Hag into my army. On the next turn, I started to upgrade my capital to tier 4. You can see that our growth was over 200 a turn, which was impressive for a one-region province on turn 23. Carcassonne also sent an army to take back Brionne from us. However, my priority was to deal with the dwarves again, as it was much more likely that the dwarves would try to attack our capital. You can also see that the Paravon rebels also retook Paravon on this turn, although that wasn't an issue. During the end turn, Carcassonne took back Brionne. While in theory they could match to my capital while I'm dealing with the dwarves, they most likely won't, and even if they did, I will be able to make it back to my capital in time as I have the tunnel stand. On the next turn, I tunnel stanced towards the Carrick Ziflin settlement. While there was a small risk of Artois attacking me over the end turn with their large army, ultimately I was unconcerned. During the end turn, Carrick Ziflin attacked me with all of their armies. While they had a lot more units than I did, all of their units were just basic melee infantry. In the deployment phase, I used the exact same formation I have shown previously. Since I anticipate that the dwarves will be very packed together at the start of the battle, my goal was to try and blob up as many of their units as possible, so that I could use the Purple Sun ability to inflict lots of damage. You can see here that Grom was able to blob up a lot of units. This was a great opportunity to use the Purple Sun ability. While Grom is very tanky, he can still take a lot of damage if multiple lords and heroes start to hit him, so I made sure to avoid them. Later on, I made sure to place Grom so that he was just inside the range of the artillery. My goal was to get the enemy to blob up around him so that the rock clobbers could damage them. Eventually, some of their infantry got into the range of the goblin archers at the front of the checkerboard. To buy time, I placed the troll hags just inside the range of the archers so that the enemy would blob up around them. I also summoned the rogue idol to buy more time. Once the enemy infantry reached the front of the checkerboard, I pulled the troll hags back. This was because I wanted to use their auras to reduce the melee attack of the infantry which were attacking my archers. Since the enemy were blobbed up, I decided to use the Purple Sun ability again. This had a chance of backfiring, as the vortex could have gone into our checkerboard. However, the risk was pretty low, as the vortex does not have a very long duration. Fortunately, I was able to win the battle. However, our front line did take a beating, but since Goblin Archers are super easy to replace, I did not care. As you can see, I actually got heroic victory this battle, which was great because heroic victories give bonus experience. On the next turn, my goal was to clean up all of Carrick Ziflin's armies. I made sure to use Lightning Strike wherever appropriate to maximise the total number of fights that I do, therefore increasing the total experience that I earn for my heroes and lord. After sacking Carrick Ziflin, I decided to make peace with them. This was because I had no intention of coming back to this region in the future, and if I did not make peace, Carrick Ziflin could have quickly built back up their forces and tunnelled towards my capital. I then started to research the Sharper Stabbers technology so that I could unlock the upgrades for my Goblin Archer units, in particular the heavy armor upgrade. On the next turn I matched Grom towards my capital so that I could tunnel back there on the following turn. I then also started to research towards the technology that decreased the construction costs, as that technology will be beneficial whenever I eventually invade Lothern. I then gave all of my Goblin Archers the heavy armor upgrade, as the bonus armor piercing damage is helpful, and I had a lot of spare scrap anyway. On the next turn I tunneled to the blue circle so that I could interact with the food merchant. Although for some reason it didn't work, fortunately I was still able to get replenishment. On the next turn I upgraded all the buildings in my capital, constructed walls there, and constructed the Orc Shaman building. Orc Shamans are useful because of their Foot of Gork ability. I then moved Grom slightly so that the food merchant would trigger. I selected the option to get the cooking challenge so that I could unlock an extra ingredient slot in the cauldron. By looking online, I was able to find the appropriate ingredients needed to complete the challenge. During the end turn, Kothiek tried to set up an ambush. However, I was lucky enough to discover it. I made sure to cook with the appropriate ingredients so that I could get back my bonuses that I lost because of the cooking challenge in the previous turn. I then attacked Kothiek and defeated them, making sure to manually resolve the battle to minimise casualties. After wiping out Kothiek's army, I decided to do the quest battle for the Axe of Grom, since my lord and heroes were sufficiently leveled up at this point. Since the battle was very easy to win, I will not showcase it in this video. A quick tip I will give, however, is to use Grom to wipe out the artillery at the start of the battle, which appears towards the right hand side of your side of the map. On the next turn, my original plan was to go back to Carcassonne to sack and occupy their settlements. However, you can see that both their settlements are currently plagued. This is also true for Bordelot's settlements too. Since I did not want to risk Grom's army getting the plague, I decided to play it safe and go sack and occupy the Paravon province instead. A couple of turns later, I wiped out all of Paravon's armies and sacked the settlement. I was not able to sack the settlement on the previous turn because I had to use my movement to chase down another army. I then started to march towards Quenelles, making sure to go into ambush stance so that the enemy could not detect me. On the next turn, I sacked and occupied Quenelles. Fortunately, the plague is no longer in both Carcassonne and Bordelot, so I could go and invade either region if I wanted to. However, I can see that Carcassonne is under siege, presumably by Clan Scryer. Therefore, my plan was this. Firstly, I would send Grom back to my capital so that I could replace my Goblin Rock Lobbers with Doomdiver Catapults, as well as recruiting an Orc Shaman. Next, I would declare war on Bordelot so that I can sack and occupy both of their settlements for experience and a lump sum of gold. Finally, I would be in a position to be able to invade Lovern as A, my army would be strong enough, B, we would have a sufficient amount of gold so that we could upgrade any settlements that we take in Lovern, and C, my capital has a large garrison, and by becoming friends with Ikitclaw, the home region will be very secure. Skipping ahead a bunch of turns, Grom is now in a position to attack Bordelot. Since I want to be friends with Ikitclaw, I offered to join war against Bordelot on the condition that we form a non-aggression pact, which he accepted. I then sacked and occupied Aquitaine, which generated a nice sum of cash. Since their capital is still in the fog of war, I made a guess that the majority of their military strength was in that area. On the next turn, I started to march to Bordelot. As you can see, they had multiple armies there. This was a great opportunity to use Lightning Strike to further level up Grom. After Lightning Striking multiple times, I sieged Bordelot. After winning the siege, I sacked the settlement for a large sum of cash. Since I couldn't occupy the settlement, I forced marched back to Aquitaine for the replenishment and to also protect it from Bordelot's armies. On the next turn, I occupied Bordelot. Since this video was meant to be an early game guide, I will stop it here. To recap, our strategy was to sack as many settlements as possible so that we could A, level up Grom and his heroes, and B, generate enough gold to level up our capital. My strategy from this point will be to invade Lovern, making sure to just occupy settlements instead of sacking them, as my intention would be to build them up. Since I had a lot of cash at this point, building up Lovern would be easy.